Her first words to me were an accusation, "You're blocking me." And I knew with absolute clarity, she was the one who had crossed the line. No build-up, no misunderstanding. Her car was sprawled across my driveway, like a rightful conqueror. She stood there, sharp-eyed and arrogant, treating me as an obstacle that needed to move out of her way. Years of being imposed upon, ignored, and taken lightly were all ignited in that moment. This wasn't a parking dispute. It was another blatant act of intrusion. I looked at her, and then at the group of self-assured companions behind her. In my mind, only one thought remained. Today, this story is getting a different ending. And it did. When she realized reality wasn't following her script, her arrogance shattered into panic. When she understood that, "not my problem," came with a cost, she stood at my door, eyes swollen, voice trembling, even her breath laced with regret. In the end, she held that incident report like a verdict, crouched by the roadside, completely disheveled. That was the first time she truly understood. This time, I wasn't backing down. And she would face the consequences. I still remember, it was early evening. I had just driven home and found my driveway blocked. She was standing at the entrance, wearing a university team hoodie, white sneakers that had been clean an hour ago but were now dusty, staring at me without the slightest hesitation. I stood at the entrance of my own driveway, hands in my jeans pockets, looking at her silver Nissan Rogue, parked sideways across my private space, the front end tilted up onto the concrete slab I had replaced just 3 months earlier. The tire marks looked like bite marks on the surface. Clearly she had rushed in without a second thought. "This is my driveway," I said. "And where you're standing is private property. I'm just parking for a bit." She lifted her chin. "You're blocking me, so you need to move your car. I have somewhere to be." Her voice wasn't loud, but that sense of entitlement, cold and dismissive, turned her words into commands. Behind her were 2 cars that had just pulled up and 3 students around her age, all in matching team jackets. They huddled behind her SUV, whispering and glancing over. They weren't lost. They weren't visitors. I knew this scene well: evening, college students, temporary parking, sneaking into the neighborhood, usually meaning a party, event, game, or exam nearby, and they treated residential driveways like free parking lots. In the last 3 years, I'd met over 20 versions of her, different faces, different excuses, same disregard. But today's version was newer, bolder, and more convinced that I was merely part of her background scenery. I looked at her car, then at her teammates. The picture was clear. She was standing confidently on my property, yet accusing me, as if I were the obstruction, not a human being. "I'm not moving my car," I said. "You're illegally parked. That's the fact." She bit her lip, like I'd given an absurd answer. "Are you serious?" she said. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. She took a deep breath, pressed a hand on my porch railing as if to steady her irritation, then said coldly, "Fine. Then you're deliberately making things difficult." Her teammates snickered behind her. And just like that, the conflict was laid bare. Her car still sprawled across my driveway, one tire crossing the property line, and she stood there waiting for me to give in, as if there could not possibly be a different outcome. I looked at the group of young people, at my driveway treated like a public lot, at 3 years of repeated silent trespasses, and something inside me settled. Today, I would not yield. She stared at me on my doorstep, but my mind was already flipping through the past. This wasn't the first time. I've lived in this house for 7 years. The first 3 were quiet, nothing unusual for a small Northern California town. But since the local university expanded enrollment, parking had become a battleground, especially on game days, frat events, and graduation season. I'd found a strange Ford blocking my car at 8 a.m. when I was trying to leave for work. I'd been woken at 11 p.m. by noise, only to find 2 drunk students smoking on my driveway and tossing beer cans on my lawn. Once, on a Saturday, I found someone charging their electric car using my outdoor outlet, as if it were a public charging station. At first, I politely reminded people. Later, I warned them sternly. Eventually, I installed cameras and put up bold private driveway/no parking signs. But to some people, civility, warnings, and signage only meant, you'll give in eventually. I wasn't a saint either. I'd blocked someone in before, but I always left a note. "This is a private driveway. I'll be home late tonight. Let me know if you need to get out. Most people apologized. Some grumbled. But at least they recognized my property. Until 2 years ago, something changed me completely. One morning I was heading to a crucial client meeting. A young guy had parked across my exit. He was on a skateboard, sipping from a cup. When he saw me, he said, "10 minutes. I gotta grab something. Just wait." No apology. No request. I reminded him it was a private driveway. He rolled away, calling, "Dude, don't be so uptight." Those 10 minutes turned into 50. I was late and lost a very valuable contract. Later, his father emailed me, saying his son was just a kid and asking me to be understanding. I stared at that email for a long time. For the first time, I realized. They didn't lack awareness. They lacked respect. That moment, I began studying every relevant regulation. I learned about private driveways, illegal entry, unauthorized parking, neighbor interventions, legal documentation, HOA policies, everything. I spent a month organizing the rules clearly. After that, I was no longer just a homeowner who got angry when blocked. I knew when I could call the police, when to file with the HOA, what behaviors counted as trespassing, and what evidence to collect. I was no longer passive. I was prepared. I wasn't violent or vengeful. I simply learned how to make people take responsibility for their actions. Back to the present, the girl blocking my driveway had no idea she wasn't dealing with a pushover. She said again, "If you don't move, I'm calling the sheriff." "You can call," I said. "But before they arrive, make sure you actually have the right to park here." I saw a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. She didn't know what I knew. She didn't know what I was prepared for. But I knew. Ever since she said, "Not my problem," this was no longer just parking. And I knew this time, I wouldn't let my home be stepped on like the past 3 years. The story had reached its turning point. Now, it was my turn. She really did call the police. 10 minutes later, a sheriff's patrol car pulled up. The deputy stepped out, glanced at her SUV, then at my driveway. She rushed over, "He's blocking me. I need to leave and he's doing it on purpose." The deputy raised his hand for silence and walked to me. "Sir, your car is parked in your own driveway, correct?" "Yes." I showed him my phone with footage from the last few days and pointed at the timestamp. She drove in at 4:21 p.m. No pause, no permission. I wasn't home at the time. When I returned, her car was already blocking the center of my driveway. He nodded and turned to her. "Do you know the homeowner? Did you get permission?" She froze. "I was just parking for a moment. I have things to do." His voice was calm. "Parking on private property requires the owner's consent. Otherwise it's considered illegal occupation." She scowled. "But he could just move his car." "I need to go." The deputy looked at me. "Can you drive right now?" I shook my head. I had a couple sips of beer earlier. "I don't want to risk a DUI. As you know, California is strict." He nodded. "Understood. Since you've consumed alcohol, I cannot ask you to move the vehicle." She stared at him, stunned. "So I'm just stuck here." He shrugged. "You're responsible for where you park." He handed her the incident number. "If you want to contest it, go through civil mediation. But you cannot force the homeowner to move his car." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, like she was realizing for the first time that she wasn't automatically in the right. Her teammates whispered behind her, suddenly far less confident. The deputy turned to me. "If this happens again, record the plate and file with the community committee. They'll handle it." "I am already doing that." The girl stood at my driveway, deflated. She didn't cuss or cry, she just stared at the incident report as if it were a document announcing her mistake was bigger than she thought. I said nothing more and went inside. But my counterattack had just begun. Legal, calm, persistent, and with actual consequences. The next morning at 8 a.m., while I was checking my driveway footage, there was frantic knocking. She stood there again, eyes puffy, clearly sleepless. "I explained yesterday," she said. "Can you please move your car now? I have a group presentation today. I can't be late." "I'm not working today," I said. "But I have plans. I'm not driving." Her voice sharpened instantly. "You can't do this forever. You're doing this on purpose." "I'm just following the rules," I said. "I'm allowed to choose when to drive." She shut her mouth, eyes reddening, not with tears, but with frustration mixed with fear. I added, "And where you leave your car is your responsibility." She flinched, really flinched. Around noon, a community committee volunteer knocked. It was a neighbor I knew. "We received the illegal parking evidence you submitted from last night," he said. "Is this yours?" I nodded and handed him the footage and screenshots. He glanced through them. "This is more than enough to start the process." The girl stood not far away, turning pale. She probably didn't expect the issue to reach the school. Some California universities count off-campus violations in student conduct records. After the volunteer left, she rushed over. "What do you want? You'll ruin me like this." "I just want you to take responsibility for what you did," I said. "Everything I've done is lawful." She choked, her voice stuck in her throat. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes. Not anger. Not indignation. But fear. At 2 p.m., her phone rang. Her father. He must have found her through the incident number. He was loud enough for me to hear. "Why did you receive a community violation notice? What did you do?" Her voice trembled. I just parked for a bit. I didn't think. I didn't listen to the whole call. I only saw her sitting on the curb, head in her hands, completely collapsing. Her teammates stood nearby, none daring to speak for her. On the third morning, she knocked again. Her voice was nearly gone. "Please, move your car. I haven't gone back to the dorm in 2 days. My professor wants to meet, the school admin wants to meet. My dad keeps calling. I really can't take it." She stood straight, but she was shaking. She held the report slip so tightly the corners were crushed. I looked at her for a long moment, from her arrogance on day one to the trembling in her voice now. I didn't mock her. I didn't rejoice. I simply asked. "Do you understand what the problem is?" She closed her eyes, as if finally allowed to breathe. "I shouldn't have treated your driveway like public parking. I shouldn't have ordered you around like you owed me anything. I shouldn't have said, 'Not my problem.' I'm sorry." Her voice wasn't loud, but each sentence was clearer than the last. When she reached, "I'm sorry," I nodded. "Okay. I'll move my car." Her whole body loosened, like a taut rope finally cut. Her knees almost gave out. I moved the car. She rushed to hers, hands shaking so hard she struggled to start the engine, 3 attempts before it turned on. Before leaving, she said through the window, "Thank you, really." It wasn't polite. It was sincere, from someone who had genuinely been woken up by consequences. Since then, no stranger has ever parked in my driveway again. The community listed the case as a violation example, and the student body learned quickly. This street isn't a free parking lot. This homeowner won't stay silent. Residents have rights. A few weeks later, I ran into her at a convenience store. She walked up, looking nervous. "I'm on the parking management volunteer team now. After that incident, I realized how disrespectful we used to be." She didn't say it with embarrassment, but with maturity, someone who had grown through accountability. I nodded. "I hope you remind others too." She said she would and walked away, light-footed, like she'd stepped out of a shadow of immaturity. And I finally had a driveway no one would trespass again.